Don't just live for tomorrow, or just live in yesterday. Just be glad for all you have that's in today. And though you've come through many obstacles.
Hey everyone, Connie here, and welcome to my blind reaction to Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid S, Episode 2. So yeah, we're here with another episode, and the first one of this season ended off interestingly. And the entire episode was like a really strong start to the season. It really went all out. Bringing us the amazing animation, amazing action, just fantastic fun, and bringing us back into the loop of these characters and their shenanigans. And it introduced to us a new character, Ilulu. Ilulu is another dragon who has a very interesting design. And she's pretty infamous online with all the controversies and everything surrounding her design. But in the series, she's a chaos dragon like Toru, except she's kind of an extremist chaos dragon. Like, she's very heavily into the destruction and everything, and is basically just causing trouble as she arrives. She and Toru fights, and Toru has to hold back due to not wanting to destroy the city and everything. So when Kobayashi manages to bribe Elma to put up a shield, a force field, that allows Toru to go all out. And she completely wipes the floor with Ilulu in literally one attack. So we see Ilulu come back and confront Kobayashi. They talk for a bit. Kobayashi's explaining kind of like what her and Toru's relationship is about. Ilulu doesn't believe her and thinks she's seducing her and shit. And so in the end, Ilulu decides, it's because you're a woman. This didn't work. My plan didn't work because you're a woman. So let's change that. She uses her magic, and as we see, Kobayashi ends up finding out in the restroom that she has been, it's pretty obvious, given a dick. We don't know if it's like, if she's changed in any other way than that, but it's at least that. And this is also, I've seen, cause a little bit of controversy in the in the social medias and everything. Some people are saying it could be seen as transphobic and everything. Some people are seeing it's just extremely inappropriate, no matter how you look at it and stuff. And let me give my perspective as a trans person. And I think I talked about this briefly last time, but I want to go into it here real quick. I'm going to try to keep it brief, though, this time here as well, just because I don't want to spend too long rambling about it. I don't think it's transphobic. And there's one very important reason why. And this is honestly the defense of this series that I use the most often, because it's honestly the best defense of this series anyone can make. It's a parody. It's not meant to be taken seriously in its comedy. Like, the relationships and everything, sure, take that seriously, but with the comedy and all, with the comedic situations and this kind of stuff happening, it's meant to be seen as making fun of all of these different tropes. Hell, the characters themselves are literal tropes. I've talked about this before, but there's literally a character named Shota who is literally a stereotypical Shotokan character. Lukua is the epitome of an over-sexualized ara-ara type character. Kana is a very stereotypical cutesy, uh, childlike character. Every one of these characters are literal stereotypes. And the only reason that we as fans love them so much is because the writing is so well done that they do manage to have depth outside of the stereotypes while still not losing the fact that they are still stereotypes. Ilulu is one too, being the stereotype of the small-bodied girl with the big breasts, the kind of character you see in the likes of Uzaki-chan Wants to Hang Out. It's very much a series of tropes, stereotypes, all of that stuff, and it's making fun of them, but also giving us a valid, enjoyable series filled with just amazingly written characters at the same time. This is no different. This is not a transphobic thing. It's a little questionable. I will give it that. But I don't see it as fully transphobic because I see it as a parody of body swap. Body swap is a trope that's been used in plenty of anime and manga, plenty of even American cartoons and stuff. Hell, it's been used in live action American movies such as Freaky Friday. But I'm specifically talking about gender swap in terms of body swap. It's the idea of when a character's gender is swapped, when they go from being a male character to a female character or vice versa. You see this in a lot of different things. One example of something that I've recently watched, or rewatched technically, is One Piece. In the Impel Down arc, pre-time skip, there's this one part where this male prisoner breaks into the New Kama land in between floors of Impel Down, and he's trying to attack Emporio Ivankov. Ivankov, whose devil fruit powers the hormone fruit, allowing him to inject hormones into people's bodies to have various different effects, injects hormones into this male prisoner's body, turning him into a female. And this is, it's not exactly played for laughs. It's more played as a demonstration of Ivankov's power, which we see him use on himself and his close allies at multiple points for very important and necessary purposes. Especially in case of fighting with that. And it's kind of the same thing. It's a gender swap. It's not meant to be seen as like transphobic. Oh, the character is now female because she has a slender body and breasts and whatnot and a vagina. Or in Dragon Maid's case, this character is now male specifically because there's a penis. It's like, yeah, of course there's a questionable aspect to that. There's always going to be. But it's not really transphobic. It's not about that. It's a literal trope that is being parodied and made fun of. Because it's been done in so many different anime and manga and whatnot. It's been done so many times. Hell, the Owl House even did it, including with the gender swap idea. With King entering Luz's body and Ida entering King's body. And Luz entering Ida's, but that's not a gender swap. You get the idea, though. Like, even Owl House played with this trope. It's a trope. And it's not, and especially when it's done in a parody manner, within the context of a parody, it's not meant to even be in any reference to transgenderism. Nothing about that is even connected. And it's like, believe me, there's a lot of things in this world that are transphobic. There's a lot of things I have seen that really bother me as a trans person, but this is not one of them. Because it's not meant to be seen that way, and it's a joke, it's a parody, it's meant to be making fun of a literal common trope in anime. People who are offended by this, I think, are just taking it too seriously, or acting like this series is supposed to be taken seriously in that regard. Again, you can take the relationships between the characters and whatnot seriously. You can take the actual emotional moments seriously, but when it comes to a lot of the comedy and the goofiness and the silliness of the series, it's not meant to be serious. It's meant to be seen as a joke, as poking fun at all of these different stereotypes and tropes. That's the point. That's what a good parody series does. It makes fun of these tropes, but also gives us really good characters and depth, even on top of that. When you can do both to this high of a degree, to where it's gotten this like strong of an audience, that's impressive. So personally, I have nothing wrong with it. I find no issues at all. Um, and I'm not saying that if you do have issue with it that you're invalid in that. No. If it genuinely offends you, if you're genuinely upset by it, that's fine. You have every right to be. You're not invalid, you're not wrong. But I think this is very much a case where it's going to be on a person by person basis. Don't try to act like the entire thing is like just blatantly and objectively wrong or objectively transphobic, because it's not. This is very much a case where it is on a person by person basis, where it is going to be subjective. It'll be offensive to some people, and that's perfectly valid, but it won't be to others. And that's also perfectly valid. And honestly, like I've said before, I consider this a comfort show. It's actually one of the most comforting shows for me, and that's a big deal. That's it's anyone's comfort show like that. When someone says that, oh, this show, like Owl House or whatever else is their comfort show, that's a big deal. That means that they find true solace and just, well, comfort, obviously, in that series. That it matters to them on such an important level that just thinking about it makes them feel joy. Not just happiness, but true joy. And a lot of the times it keeps them from anger and sorrow and helps them just be able to survive everyday life. That's how big of a deal this series is to me. It's not my favorite series, technically, or anything, but I would consider it a comfort show. I would consider it to have that level of emotional importance to me. And the same could be said for MLP. The same could be said for The Owl House. Those are comfort shows to me as well. And so it's like, that's why I defend this series so heavily. Because it matters that much to me. And even this stuff, the parodies and the stuff that is admittedly a little questionable, it's only a little questionable. It never gets to the part where it offends me or bothers me. Because if it did, this wouldn't be a comfort show for me. I definitely wouldn't like it as much as I do. It doesn't bother me as a trans person. It doesn't bother me in terms of any of the tropes or whatnot it covers. Because I understand, one, the difference between reality and fiction. I don't try to connect it to reality like some people do. And two, I understand that it's a joke. It's a parody. Be it's meant to not be taken seriously in that regard. You're not supposed to see these tropes and like think like, "Oh, this is bad because this is bad in real life." It's like, "No. That's not how it works." Do you play a violent video game and get upset at the violent video game because violence is bad in real life in most cases? Do you play Mortal Kombat and get upset at that because violent murder is bad in real life? No, because you understand there's a difference between real life and that game. And it's the same thing here. Anime, cartoons, video games, comics, all of this stuff is an escape from reality. Yes, we can praise it, we can praise these pieces of media when they do show realistic depictions of things, and we can praise them when they have realistic characters and situations that connect to us. But we also have to realize that it's not reality. And we have to be okay with some of the things that are in it that we wouldn't necessarily agree with in reality, in real life. Again, Mortal Kombat, like people really fight for Mortal Kombat in that regard, in the entire argument of do violent video games cause violence? But again, I'm starting to ramble. I could talk about this for a long, long time. I've already gone on too long. You guys are probably just like saying, get on with it already. So we're going to get on with it already. I don't know what's going to happen in this episode at all, so let's find out. When the screen fades to black, pause this redirect and go to the description below. Follow the link to the reaction, and after you watch it, come back here to the redirect and resume play. Because after it fades to black, then fades back in, everything from that point forward will be my afterthoughts, and will contain spoilers to the episode. So, that being said, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you at the reaction. And we are back, and we'll begin with spoilers in 3, 2, 1, now. So I can already tell that there's going to be some diehard viewers of this, and haters, I should say, who are going to, well, diehard haters, I should say, not diehard viewers, but there are going to be some diehard haters of this who are going to really go at this episode for one notable thing. The fact that Kobayashi feels sexual attraction towards Toru only because she was given a dick and turned into a male. People are going to see it as like, oh, this is implying that men just automatically have sexual attraction to any woman just because they're male and have a dick, and it implies that just because Kobayashi's male now, she automatically has to be sexually attracted to Toru. And it implies that because she was female before, she couldn't have that sexual attraction to Toru because women don't have sexual attraction to each other. And it's like, you guys take this way too seriously. It's, again, a parody. It's a joke. Yeah, in real life, if someone was saying that, like, in real life, like, I don't know, some Ben Shapiro dumbass or something, saying that kind of dumb shit in real life, yeah, that would be something to complain about. That would be something to really go off on. But in terms of a parody series that's meant to be making fun of a lot of these tropes and all, it's like, yeah, it's making fun of the, again, entire gender swap trope. People just don't seem to get this. So yeah, it's annoying, to say the least. But let's talk about this. So this was a very interesting episode for a number of reasons. We got to find out Ilulu's backstory. So when Ilulu was young, she played with some of the young child humans of her realm. We already knew that there were humans in their realm too, that they were had like magic and stuff, and one of them like summoned a holy sword that hit Toru and everything. The sword that Kobayashi ended up pulling out of her in the mountains. We know that that world has had humans. In season one, there was even backstory about a human that Toru had interacted with prior to coming to the human world. This girl who wanted to be a maid. So we know that world has humans too, but they're just different than the humans of our world. But Ilulu had friends there, and we find out that after her parents were murdered by other humans, those who raised her and taught her following that instilled in her this belief that humans are evil and that coexistence is impossible. And there's a one point where Ilulu brings up a very important point. She wonders why she couldn't continue playing with her friends, and notes that they didn't do anything wrong. And yes, I know I talk about how this series is a parody and how there's a lot of things that shouldn't be taken seriously, but I want to make it clear. I'm talking about the comedic aspects of it, specifically the stuff that is very clearly meant to be a joke. Like I said in the pre-thoughts, when you're talking about the emotional depth of the characters and whatnot, and the backstories and their just all of that kind of stuff, like, yeah, you can take that stuff seriously because that stuff's meant to be, and it's very clearly like meant to be taken more seriously. It's super obvious that it's super obvious when you're watching. You can tell what's meant to be taken seriously and what's not. You see this episode, you see that scene at the end where like Ilulu's talking about mating with Kobayashi and giving her a dick again and everything, and Toru's just getting really upset and everything. It's like, obviously that's not meant to be taken seriously. It's meant as a joke. It's meant for fun. It's meant for just ridiculousness. But you see the part where like Kobayashi is comforting Ilulu and just being there for her, especially with what she's been going through and what she's been forced to believe and everything. It's like, yeah, that's obviously supposed to be taken very seriously. That's obviously supposed to be seen as really emotional and heavy. You can tell. It's very easy to tell what parts of these shows, what parts of these episodes are supposed to be taken more seriously and what parts are supposed to be taken as parody. It's blatant, in your face, obvious. So like when we're hearing this and when she says like they didn't do anything, why couldn't we still hang out? Why couldn't we still be friends? They didn't do anything. That was a big moment, and it's like, wow. Because this is a lesson that a lot of people in real life need to learn. There's a logical fallacy called guilty by association, where people who employ it believe that you're guilty of crimes just based on being associated with those who have committed them. Like, let's say that let's say this woman is slapped around by her boyfriend, right? So guilty by association would be automatically assuming that all guys, every male person, is an abuser. That would be guilty by association. It's a logical fallacy. Logically speaking, it does not work. It makes no sense. It does not logically work. There's no precedence for saying that all men are abusers just because one happened to be one. Or even if many happen to be one. And yeah, there's obviously many out there who are. And that's kind of the thing here. It's very clear that the dragons are employing the guilty by association fallacy. That because of the actions of some humans, hell, even maybe a lot of them, a good portion of them, but because of the actions of some of them, the dragons are seeing all humans as evil. They see coexistence between humans and dragons as impossible because of the actions of some. And this has been a big thing throughout all of history. People being blamed for the actions of others just because they happen to be in the same class, the same race, the same so on and so forth. And there's a point where you just have to step back and realize it's like not everyone is guilty of these actions just because some people are. There are people out there who will go out of their way to make sure that they're not abusers, that they're not shitty people like those around them. And trying to judge everyone based on that is just, it's wrong. Because you're making assumptions about people. And there's always exceptions. There's exceptions to every rule. It's just, it's how you take it, how you look at it, and everything. And it depends on situations as well. Depends on circumstances and various sets of beliefs and whatnot. There are some cases where it's like, yeah, all people of this group are bad. It's just blatant, like Nazis. Every single Nazi is evil, without question, because their philosophy is evil. Their entire philosophy is based on evil. Therefore, if you're a Nazi, you believe in that philosophy, you're evil. That is an exception to the rule. That is something where it's like, yeah, guilty by association, yeah, you are. And so on and so forth. There are examples like that. But for most cases, that's not the case. So I just really like that this went into that. And it's like, these kids did nothing wrong. They aren't an enemy. Yes, they're humans, but they're innocent. They were my friends. Why couldn't I hang out with and play with them anymore? And you see how this has affected Ilulu. You see that it's really bothered her and that she's been basically forced to believe and live the way she has. This hatred of humans, it's made pretty clear that she doesn't actually hate humans. She actually likes humans. And that this was just an ideology forced upon her by her elders because of their biases, which is also a very real thing that happens to people. A lot of people, parents, leaders in schools and churches even, and all kinds of places in the real world will often force their own biases and beliefs on children against their will. And a lot of times those children will grow up and realize this, and they'll start to change and they'll start to make their own choices, their own decisions, come to their own conclusions about a lot of things that will deviate greatly from those the decisions and beliefs and all of those who influence them. And we see here that when Ilulu is shown just one little moment, well, maybe not one, a couple little moments of respect, care, just love from a human who she's been told to hate for all this time, she's reminded of those friends and she realizes she was wrong to think the way she did. And she ends up just like all these other dragons, especially like Toru and Kana specifically, becoming really attached to Kobayashi. when Kobayashi's unconscious and healing from being attacked by the one dragon, the Harmony faction guy, Ilulu never leaves her side, and she's crying and sobbing and apologizing, and she really feels sorry for what she did and for putting Kobayashi into this, because she now realizes that it's okay to like humans, and she's allowed to like humans. It's actually really powerful, and I really love it. Um, we also find out some other information this episode about Ilulu, such as the fact that she's about the same age as Toru, which is going to be interesting to see how some of the haters respond to that, because they did, a lot of these haters didn't care about the fact that Uzaki from Uzaki-chan Wants to Hang Out is a adult college student. They still claimed it was pedophilia because it's like, oh, this child looking character still has big breasts, and it's like they're just making her an adult to try and just cover their bases with that to make it not seem like pedophilia when it still actually is, because it's still a child bodied character. And it's like, one, that entire idea was shut down real quick once people with that actual body type who are adults started coming forward and basically saying fuck you. But also it's like, that's, again, it just doesn't have really any basis in logic. But there are people, there are haters who are still going to make that same argument with Ilulu here. It's like, oh, she's a confirmed adult. She's a confirmed she's confirmed to be the same age, about the same age as Toru. It's like, oh, they're just saying that so it doesn't seem like pedophilia. She's still a child body character. It's like, no, she's not. There are people with there are genuinely people who are just small. And even people who are small and have big breasts. It does exist, believe it or not. People like that do exist. But the haters are going to use that. They are. They're going to use it just as they'll use any excuse to try and shit on this show. And to try and make others shit on it too. Every argument I've seen from people about this series falls flat in that regard. But yeah, it's interesting information. We see that Ilulu seems to grow very affectionate towards Kobayashi, more than just like typically, like more like Toru does. Very like affectionate to the degree that she's like, I want to have sex with you. I want to mate with you. Give me your babies. I can give you a dick again. It's like, chill, for one. But it's like, this is going to create an interesting dynamic between her, Kobayashi, and Toru. Not really a love triangle per se, because Kobayashi, at least as of now, does not reciprocate any of that kind of romantic or sexual love towards either of them. Not even Toru at this point, who she does show love for, just not that kind of love. So it's not really a love triangle in that regard. It's more of like both Toru and Ilulu have one-sided feelings towards Kobayashi, and they're just being notably aggressive about it. So it's like we're gonna have a rivalry kind of thing here, clearly. And the opening does hint at that. Just like the opening tells us that, yeah, Ilulu was going to become good and become a friend, of course. It also told us, like, oh yeah, Ilulu and Toru are going to have a little bit of a rivalry going on for Kobayashi's affections. Like, we see that at the very end of the opening when Toru leans her head onto Kobayashi and then Ilulu does the same in response, and then Toru gets mad at her. It's like, oh yeah, we know what that means. So I'm not at all surprised by how this turned out. I'm more surprised that this got resolved so quickly. I was thinking the Ilulu thing was going to take another episode or two before we actually got her on our side. But no, it actually is just in episode 2, which is like, all right. I mean, I don't mind. I'm just a little surprised it took so quickly. But it makes sense as to why it did, because of, again, finding out that she didn't really hate humans but was kind of forced to believe in that kind of idea against her will. So it makes sense that it would actually happen pretty quickly. This other dragon we saw was pretty interesting, a member of the Harmony faction with Elma. And it's interesting too that he didn't seem to know that Toru and Elma, and I assume by extension Luqua and Fafnir and Kana, are all in the human world. Which means that either someone is actively hiding that information back in their world, or the others just haven't had any big enough impact on the human world to gather the Harmony faction's attention. Either that or the Harmony faction just doesn't care about what they're doing. If it is the first option and it's someone's interfering, could it be Toru's father? And if so, why? It doesn't seem like he would. So that'd be interesting if it were him. What if it's actually one of our dragons who is interfering with all of it? What if Elma herself is doing something to dissuade attention away from everything? Because again, this guy, he one, didn't know Toru was in this world, and two, he was going to call Elma for backup, not knowing she was in this world too. So it's genuinely interesting to see if that's going to come up again. In the meantime, Toru erased his memories and sent him on his way, but still, I'm genuinely curious where this is going to go, if it does, and I assume it's going to. In the meantime, we're just going to kind of have to see where this season goes, because I'm excuse me, I'm not entirely clear yet what a lot of the focus is going to be. It's probably going to just be like season 1 in terms of being very episodic still, but there's still a lot of things that they could do. And both these first 2 episodes have had really intense moments so far. Both of them have been like just really strong showings out of the bat, like not holding anything back. So I'm wondering if that's kind of a hint of things to come. I guess we'll find out. But yeah, I very much enjoyed this episode. And again, I'm not bothered by the things in it, because I understand that it is a parody, that it's meant to be making fun of these things. So I'm not bothered by it. But I would like to hear your thoughts nonetheless. Tell me in the comments below, what did you think of this episode of Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid S? What do you think of Ilulu's backstory and turn to the good side? And how do you think that this is going to go down with Ilulu now also showing affection towards Kobayashi? Tell me your thoughts on all of that and more down in the comments below, and thank you so much for tuning in. For now, I'm Connie, and I'm signing off. See y'all next time.